Christopher Columbus deceived the Queen of Spain and his crew, for he was not so great as a captain and master of sailing as he had claimed. With the help of certain instruments, he knew how to locate the route. He also did petty jobs on a few ships and had some sense, but overall he was an average shipper. This mediocre captain was on his way to an unseen destination, and as time passed, his crew was turning against him. When the day came, the crew hatched a plan to kill Christopher Columbus. Why did the crew want to kill their captain? How did Columbus escape? A certain death. And how did this fleet discover the shores of the New World? Before the voyage, the government of Spain made many promises to Columbus. In a promise, Columbus was supposed to become part of Spain's fancy group called the aristocracy. He'd get the title of caballero, which means gentleman. But there was more to it. People with this title and their kids would use don before their names, which means master. In the second promise, Columbus was to get the title of Great Admiral of the Ocean. He will get equal rights and privileges as an admiral of the Spanish state of Castile. Columbus was promised a tenth of the valuable gems found in the lands he discovered, and he'd get 1/8 of space in trade ships to carry his own goods. The Spanish government also promised the first crew member to spot Asia's tip a lifelong yearly payment of 10,000 maravids per year for life. The current value of this amount is around $1,500. The promises made by the government of Spain relate to the time to come. Then the Queen of Spain was a bit stingy about giving Columbus what he wanted. You already saw in the last episode that the situation in Europe had become very bad, so the Queen gave Columbus only 2 ships for this important expedition. Columbus didn't receive these ships from the government's money. Instead, the local folks where Columbus was going helped him out with the ships. The Queen told those people they had done things that were disrespectful and didn't help her out, so she kinda demanded the ships from them. So as punishment, provide us with 2 ships for 1 year at your own expense. So now we order you to provide the ships. Columbus found 2 suitable ships, but he was not given much food or weapons to carry them. Only a total of 89 crew members were provided for both of his ships. A few small cannons, guns, and insufficient food and water supplies were loaded into the ships. Given so few supplies and crew, Columbus himself made efforts and borrowed a 3rd ship, the Santa Maria, which was his own ship. Now there were 3 ships, and all 3 had big red crosses on their sails. Columbus embarked on this historic voyage on August 3rd. He was seen off by the Queen and King under the cross and amid church bells. He passed through the present Canary Islands off the coast of Africa, sailed to Asia or Japan as per his ideas. In his estimates, the journey from the Canary Islands to Japan was 4,500 kilometers. These islands had a wind that made it easy for a ship to sail westward. That's why he came here in the first place, so that he could start from here. When Columbus left here on August 3rd, he had an endless sea in front of him and 3 ships floating on it, whose captain had no idea when to have the luck to see the land again, whether or not he will leave the land. For the first few days, the journey went smoothly. The wind was favorable, and the crew was also calm and happy. So the ships proceeded with ease. Columbus would have breakfast in his cabin every morning, and then come out of the cabin and look up at the sky and pray for good weather. Then he would chat with the crew, give instructions, and go to his room. The positions of the sun, moon, and stars guided the voyage as per tradition. Columbus was not an expert in this work, but he pretended to be so. He had an instrument in the form of a semicircular triangle with which he would hang a plumb bob to monitor the position of the sun, moon, and stars to determine the direction of the ships accordingly. Thus, he somehow continued to advance on the western route. According to the estimate, they should have seen the land in 10 to 15 days. But 20 days passed, no land or any sign of it, like birds, etc., emerged. The Columbus's crew began to lose patience. Whispers started among the crew that this Italian man, in pursuit of becoming rich and famous, wanted to kill us. If a few more days will pass like this and the food and drinks are gone, their lives will also be no more. 1 or 2 days passed like this, and the sailors and crew perceived a sure death. They felt if they continued to stay with the craziness of Columbus, they would starve to death, and the fishes would eat their flesh. They demanded Columbus return, but Columbus refused. So, some of the crew facing their own deaths thought of killing Columbus, because if he had been killed, obviously the return journey would have started. Now there were discussions on the 3 ships that were with Columbus that Columbus is not a Spanish to care about them. That is, he does not belong to Spain, but to Italy. While the rest of the ship's crew were from Spain, they were Spaniards. Therefore, nation-based bias or parochialism was also there. Throwing an Italian into the sea would not cause harm to the Spaniards. On returning, they will say he was died in an accident. The death of one will at least save the lives of the rest of the Spaniards. After this thought, the ship's crew began to go against Columbus. Often, Columbus would order something, but the crew did the opposite, giving him threats. Things were becoming dangerous for Columbus with every passing day. He thought of tempting the crew. With the greed of added things, to get control over them, but he did not have much success. The crew were facing death, so there was no question of being allured by the added reward. So, in despair and anxiety, they began to form illusions. Just as the thirsty in the desert get the mirages or illusions of water springs, so his crew often got the illusion of land being just in front of them, and that they have reached Asia. But when the ships were directed to the side where people imagined land, no land was found even after sailing for miles. Only water would be there, on all 4 sides, deep blue water. Even the blue sky seemed to them like water. Up, down, right, left, forward, and backwards, it was only water. Amid this desperation, defeat, and scuffles and fear of death, a person on the ship heard the chirping of the birds. Screaming like madmen, they started looking for birds in the sky. The entire crew started staring at the sky along with him. On October 7th evening, Columbus and his crew saw flocks of migrating birds. The birds were migrating from North America to the West Indies to spend the winter. Seeing so many birds together was like getting into heaven. These rows of birds were no less than an occasional help for Columbus. He also turned his ships in the same direction in which the birds were going. He gave the good news to his crew about reaching the land while pursuing the birds. But despite traveling for 2 days, no land was seen anywhere. The sight of the birds was not at all a mirage, for the noise of the birds was increasing as they advanced. This noise had become their hope. They wanted to see dry land soon, at any cost. Another 3 days passed, and the birds would occasionally appear. The noise would increase and decrease, but there was no sign of the land. The ship's crew once again plunged into deep thought. They surrounded Columbus with the intention of killing him. The crew warned Columbus to order the ships to turn their direction, or they would kill him and throw him overboard. Columbus had stopped them for 5 weeks with pretexts and the lure of rewards. But now he had no new idea: to control them. As a last resort, he promised the staff that he would be given only 3 days. If the land is visible, fine. Otherwise, it is ready to go back. Columbus was now overcome with fear of his failure. In this fear, for the last 3 days, he ran the ships at full speed. He didn't even care. If any of his ships or all 3 crash into an unseen rock, he was driving the 3 ships westward, overlooking all threats. He would stroll restlessly on the deck and look impatiently at the distant horizon. It was the night between October 11 and 12. It was 10 o'clock when he saw a light on the horizon. Then there were no electric lights that could be seen from miles away. Then, what was this light? Columbus actually did not know what these lights were. However, he called out to his staff to come and see the lights, but his crew could not see the lights. Some people expressed confusion, but the mystery of the lights could not be solved. And it was understood that it was an illusion of Columbus. However, if we look today from the direction Columbus saw the lights, had the nearest island 56 kilometers away. And from there, light could not reach Columbus, even if 400,000 candles were lit. But it was 4 hours after this mirage of light that a man from the mast of the ship, Pinta, actually saw a sand dune. At 2 o'clock in the night, the moonlight made the sand island shine like the moon. After meeting his eyes, he was sure that it was not an illusion, not a mirage, but the land, he shouted. Terra, 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 meaning land, land, land. The captain of the Pinta ship fired a small shell from a cannon, conveyed to the other two ships that land had been sighted, after 36 days. After a grueling voyage, Columbus's fleet had reached the shores of the New World. The world has been missing for 11,000 years, had been discovered. Columbus said to the captain of the Pinta ship, "Senor Martin Alonso, you have found the land." The captain of Pinta said, "Sir, my reward will not be wasted, will it?" Columbus replied, "I give you 5,000 maravedis as a present." After finding the land, the ship's crew, who were bent upon killing Columbus, praising him and asking for forgiveness lest Columbus deny them reward, because many of the same people had tried to kill him. And see, the same happened. The person who, from the mast, saw the earth first, for which a reward was fixed, was not given the reward. Columbus himself kept this prize. He claimed to have seen a light from the island 4 hours before the man, which was later discovered. Were there any solar lights to make such a light visible from that long distance? It was a mirage, a deception that Columbus had had. Rather, he was still under the illusion that he had reached Asia. He had no idea that he had not reached Asia or India, but a 25,000 year ago, settled new land by then inhabitants. He has discovered the land that was missing for 11,000 years, because then the two worlds had lost contact with the end of the Ice Age. After the discovery of this land, Columbus and his companions merited to be heroes, became villains. History titled them the most cruel instead of the gentle boy of history. Why? How did the Native Americans receive Columbus? How did Columbus treat the natives of this world he sensed, China and Japan, to get gold? We will show you all this in the next episode of The History of America. How does the last ice age relate to America? And how do Siberian hunters inhabit America? Subscribe our channel, like our video, and press icon to get notified about our new video.